11th, 2019 meeting of the Transportation Committee of the Metropolitan Council. First order of business tonight is approval of the agenda. Does anyone have any changes or additions to the agenda?
Move approval.
Second.
Any other discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
And opposed, nay. The agenda is approved. Next order of business is approval of the minutes. Yes, tonight is not February 11th. I was reading tonight is February 25th. So we're approving the February 11th minutes. Anyone have changes or additions? If not, I entertain a motion to approve them.
So move.
Is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. And the minutes are adopted. Next on the agenda is the TAB Liaison Report. I spoke with Mr. Dugan, and because we had our last TAB meeting was canceled because of weather, he's going to come back to the next Transportation Committee meeting. That will move on to reports. First, we've got MTS Director, Mr. Thompson.
Madam Chair, council members, a couple updates, two related to items on the agenda. First, the Riverview. Last week, Councilmember Barber, Chair Slawick, Ramsey County Commissioner Ortega, and staff from council and Ramsey County went down and met with Prairie Island community to discuss the Riverview project. This was part of our effort over the public comment period to do an more consultation with tribes in Minnesota. And the Prairie Island community reached out to us, and their tribal government did request a meeting with us. So I thought it was an excellent meeting. We gave background on the project. They had not necessarily been too involved during the LPA process, and so gave general background and had a really good discussion about ways that we can continue the consultation as we move in forward. Should the council approve this action, move forward with consultation on this important project to a lot of the especially around the Fort Snelling area. So I thought it was a good a meeting that we're looking to have with other tribal governments as this project goes forward. And also, as mentioning the weather with TAB not meeting last week, they did have the agenda item related to TPP amendment. TAB takes a step to recommend the public comment period, also recommend to the council, and they did do an electronic vote. Just I wanted to let you know that they did vote also to recommend that the council approve that TPP for public comment. Legislatively, it's been fairly quiet in terms of bills moving forward. Obviously, the governor introduced his budget proposal last week that is very a good proposal for transportation in our region. But we continue to have bills that comes forward. The one this week is mostly related to our Metro Mobility Data Sharing Bill. I think we are setting a record for the number of committees that a bill needs to go through because it requires judicial, local government, transportation, data practices, all of those in both houses. So it's getting a lot of attention, but it's receiving good support. That bill also includes expansion of Metro Mobility to 5 more communities. So it's tied together in that service. And then I'll just mention that the House is holding hearings out in the community, and a lot of those, they've had ones in St. Cloud. Tomorrow night is at North High. They have one in Blaine on Friday and Shakopee next week. And they're generally House Transportation Finance meetings, but there are a lot of public are invited and speaking, and the Met Council and Transportation is brought up at a lot of these, we expect at these meetings. And in St. Cloud, there's a lot of discussion about North Star extension, for example. We usually don't know what topics will be brought up necessarily at the meetings, but we're fully attending because we want to be in the community and answer any questions that come up at these public hearings in the community. So with that, Madam Chair, members, that concludes my comments. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Any questions for Director Thompson? Okay, then we'll move on to, we've got Mr. Pellegrin here tonight.
Thank you.
Metro Transit.
Madam Chair and members of the Transportation Committee, I have a few items to share with you this afternoon. March 9th service changes for Metro Transit. Several service changes will take effect Saturday, March 9th. The changes are part of our regular quarterly service adjustments. Most notable changes are occurring in downtown Minneapolis, where city-led road construction will cause us to detour several popular routes from 8th Street to 6th Street. There are about 350 trips on 8th Street each workday. These trips will operate on 6th Street until construction on 8th Street is finished later this year. Some new bus shelters will be added along 6th Street to help accommodate customers. During the city's reconstruction project, we'll also build several BRT shelters on 8th Street that will later be served by the C and D lines. When the C line opens in June, it will operate on 6th Street. As early as this spring, we expect the city to begin construction on Hennepin Avenue, causing us to shift bus operations from that corridor to Nicollet Mall. Item smoking enforcement on LRT. Transit police will be doing more to deter smoking on at and near our light rail vehicles beginning this week. Plainclothes officers will be riding at times and locations where we've received the most reports of this behavior and issuing citations as necessary. Smoking on transit property is a misdemeanor, punishable by a fine of up to $300. And then weather. I had a couple of wanted to share with you a couple of photos. Here we go. There we go. These are actually tweets. The one on the left there is we made the National Weather Service snow record. They used our train, and that's a 3-car train at Government Center, and it talks about setting a snow record for the month of February. Please notice the snow level there is up to what we call the ball of the rail. It can't get any higher. The snow plows, the trains are literally plowing snow as they move along. So just an idea. And then the one on the right there, of course, is a little lighthearted skier who's taking the LRT to work. So thought I'd share those tweets with you. Also, as the chief operating officer, I've been out a lot with our forces, our resources. We have had, in the last 3 weeks, we have had 8 rail breaks on Green Line and Blue Line, which has set a record. Usually, each season, when it gets very cold, goes below zero and well below zero, we'll have maybe 2, sometimes 3 each season. But so far this year, we've had 8, which is, understand when this is safe condition, we actually go out and we put a bracket on the rail to hold the rail together. But in the spring and the summertime, we literally have to put a new piece of rail into that place, which will cause us to have to do a night shutdown to do that. Particularly on the Green Line, where we have a lot of embedded track, we actually have to dig up the cement. So it's much more resource intensive there. Also on North Star, BNSF has also had 5 rail breaks on North Star too with the extreme cold.
Madam Chair, Vince, so is a rail break a crack?
No, it's,
What's a rail break?
Madam Chair, Council Member, it's literally a break. We'll see it in the control center on our SCADA system. That's how we know it happened. Because the way the signal system works, we have a continuous rail, because understand that our overhead wire is positive, the track is the ground, so we have continuous rail. If that breaks, we know it. And do we have, sometimes we have cracks, we'll identify cracks, but these are literally breaks where the rail will separate sometimes as much as a half to 3/4 of an inch.
And is that, if I can follow up, Madam Chair, is that primarily caused just by the extra cold temperatures?
Madam Chair and Councilman, yes, it is. I mean, one of the characteristics of steel is, it shrinks when it's very cold and expands when it's hot. So, and because we have continuously welded rail, it just
Doesn't have anywhere to go.
pops.
Yeah.
And it's something we've had ever since we've opened. We've had probably, like I said, we usually have 2 or 3 when it gets extremely cold each season, but we know how to handle them. We know when it happens, so it's safe. We'll go into what we call restricted speed for that area until we identify the break and are able to get the track people out there to bracket it. There's a special bracket that we use to clamp the rail back together. But the aftermath of that is we have 8 rail breaks where we have to actually weld in a whole new piece of rail now, which is resource intensive. That's my report. I can handle any questions if you like.
Any questions from council members?
Oh, by the way, the buses did very well. Brian Funk is here, and if I left out the buses, he would be mad. The buses did very well. As a matter of fact, in the very extreme cold, where it was minus 31, we had no fuel problems. You know, where others were having fuel problems and things like that. The buses did very well, and matter of fact, we were very, very reliable in the extreme cold. Some of us were pretty surprised because that kind of cold will usually cause us to have fuel gelling problems, things like that, technical problems. But we did not, so it was good.
All right, thank you very much. All right, now we're on to our business for the evening. There are no consent items tonight. We have several non-consent items. The first one is item 2019-30, which is a joint same week item, and we have Ed Petrie and Heather Augustin-Heber.
Good afternoon, Chair, committee members, Ed Petrie, Metro Transit.
And Heather Augustin-Hebner, MTS.
We're here this evening with carry forward amendment for the 2019 budget. It's a small amendment this evening. I'll go through the information. First of all, for Metro Transit, we have a few items for the capital side, one item for the operating side. I'll go through those first and stand for any questions, and then let Heather proceed with her stuff for MTS. So the items for Metro Transit this evening, there's three different items on the capital side I'd like to discuss. First of all, one is an administrative adjustment on the orange line. It is for $18,416,000. If you recall, with the dissolution of CTIB, it was agreed upon that the respective counties would assume the respective grants on the CTIB side. So on the orange line, we have $18.4 million worth of CTIB grants that are now being assumed by both Hennepin and Dakota County. So we're removing the CTIB money and then replacing it with Hennepin and Dakota. So that's the first item. The next item is on the orange line. Also, if you recall, a few weeks back, we were recipients of a $74 million Small Starts federal grant. So we're recognizing that $74 million into the capital program this evening. So we're very happy about that, which will then bring that project forward. The other item is for expansion buses on the D line. If you recall, we were awarded a couple years ago a Cmac Grant for D-line buses. As a result of the federal shutdown, this was one of the casualties or delays of the federal shutdown, we had applied for the Cmac Grant. It's in process, but it has not yet been awarded. It should be awarded within the next 3 to 4 weeks. We should have the award that will be coming in. It's already been applied for. It's just in final review at the FDA headquarters right now. So we have option buses that are going to be expiring in the middle of March that we had planned to order C-Line buses with. It's for 8 buses. So we're going to temporarily encumber $6 million worth of RTC funds so we can exercise those buses. And then with the next capital amendment, the first quarter capital amendment in the month of April, then I will come back then and release that $6 million of RTC and replace it with the awarded CMAQ dollars. So those are the three items that I do have for the capital side. And Madam Chair, I would stand for any questions before I move on to operating.
Any questions for the presenter? Okay, go ahead.
Okay, thank you. And the item for on the operating side for Metro Transit is we have 3 IS positions that were originally hired that are for our police lens project that were hired by Metro Transit. We have been working with the regional administration IS department. It was decided that we will then move those 3 IS people over to those 3 Metro Transit people over to the IS budget. Then they will then allocate the cost back to us. So it's just moving the 3 people over to the IS budget. They will then allocate costs back. It's a cost neutral for Metro Transit. Doesn't change the impact of the services or the lens project. It's just moving the staff to regional administration. And with that, Madam Chair, I would stand for any questions on operating before I turn it over to Heather.
Any questions?
Madam Chair and committee members, MTS only has one request of you tonight, and we are requesting to increase the 2019 authorized capital program by $1.5 million. New funds will be used to upgrade the 3G system network to a new 4G system on Metro Mobility and Transit Link buses. The 3G system will no longer be supported by Verizon at the end of 2019. we could lose our ability to communicate with our buses on critical items such as routing and scheduling if we don't upgrade. This specific project is not in the CIP, but general technology system upgrades are identified in the CIP. So every year, we know that there are going to be changes in technology that we don't have when we develop the CIP. So we do have some generic project titles that say project technology system upgrades, and that's where these funds are coming from. This amendment supports the Thrive outcome of stewardship by demonstrating a commitment towards asset preservation. It also promotes economic competitiveness and supports prosperity in the region by adding funding for the Orange Line. In summary, the Transportation Division is requesting amendments to the operating and capital budgets as indicated in attachments 1 and 2, and I'd be happy to stand for any questions you may have.
Any questions from council members? Not, I would entertain a motion to approve the action.
Move approval.
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Any other discussion? Motion passes.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, next we're on to item 2019-42, master contracts for mechanical engineering services. We have Julie Brenny.
Madam Chair and committee members, I'm Julie Brenny from Metro Transit Engineering and Facilities, and I'm presenting business item 2019-42 for master contracts for mechanical engineering. Metro Transit has used master contracts since 2001, and this is a single discipline category specifically for mechanical engineering. It is replacing a group of contracts that are expiring and have been fully exhausted. We will be using the contracts for capital and operating projects across all modes of the system. That would be bus, rail, and commuter rail. Typical work that would be designed under these contracts includes projects such as hoist replacements, mechanical system upgrades, and other building systems projects. Because the procurement is a single discipline, we did not have a DBE goal applied to this procurement. However, one of the 5 vendors we're recommending is a DBE, that is Hallberg Engineering. And one of the other vendors, TKDA, also has voluntarily included a DBE sub. So we've been trying to encourage this participation, and we feel that the vendors are recognizing that. This promotes stewardship through the needed rehabilitation and replacement of our existing assets for the Thrive analysis. And in summary, we're requesting authorization to award 5 contracts, each valued at $250,000 for a total of $1,250,000. This does not guarantee that we will spend the funds. They're expended as needed on a work order basis. With that, if anyone has any questions.
Councilmember Dorfman.
Madam Chair, one question, the $500,000 cap for any of these, how is that measured? I mean, these are firms that we do lots of business with, that may be involved in various rail projects, light rail projects and others. How do you measure, and is that on an annual basis when they've hit that 500,000 and it needs to come
Madam
for a
Chair and
vote?
Council Member, as far as the 500,000, what we've done is analyzed what we anticipate we're going to need over the next 4 years. Based on anticipated projects, we've looked out to our CIP spending and what we expect over the next term. And that's how we came up with needing $1,250,000 potentially. We generally try to go a little over our need in case something unexpected comes up. And we would anticipate we'll use the bulk of this, but there is no guarantee to the vendors that we'll use any of their money in their contract. We do try to equitably split the dollars between the vendors to make it fair. We don't want to favor one vendor.
I think, you know what? I think I was reading this wrong now that I'm hearing you explain it. I was thinking of it is that we couldn't spend any of this money with a firm if they had an ongoing contract somewhere else working with the county that was over 500,000 or something. That's not what this is. So, okay.
Okay, any other questions? All right, if not, I would entertain a motion to approve.
Move approval, Madam Chair.
Uh, Is there any other discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. And the motion carries. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, next items, there's actually two of them related to Southwest LRT, 2019-43 and -44. Kelly McCann?
Yes, hi.
Nice.
Madam Chair, committee members, I'm here presenting, Kelly McKeon, the Agreements Manager with Southwest LRT. Today I'm presenting business item 2019-43, same week for the BNSF Construction Agreement, Amendment Number 1 with BNSF. BNSF owns and operates freight rail service on the Wayzata subdivision. The Southwest LRT project alignment is adjacent to the BNSF right-of-way for approximately 1.4 miles. Construction of the project requires shifting the freight track to make space for the light rail transit infrastructure. The civil contractor hired Lunda will construct the site work and the LRT elements. BNSF will provide full-time flaggers and construct the freight rail elements. This map here shows the project alignment and identifies in blue the Wayzata subdivision. The council approved business item 2017-164 to authorize the regional administrator to negotiate and execute the construction agreement with BNSF. The construction agreement was finalized in early February and will route with a packet of BNSF agreements here shortly. The construction agreement outlines roles and responsibilities during construction, and it requires that we take an amendment forward when BNSF approves the project schedule, priority 1 group work, the plan specifications, and the initial cost estimate. The parties have now agreed on these items, and the cost estimate is $4.5 million for BNSF activities. This amount is within the project budget. So the recommendation for business item 2019-43, same week, is to authorize the regional administrator to negotiate and execute an amendment to the construction agreement to incorporate schedules, plans, and specifications, and to issue a purchase order up to a not to exceed amount of $4.5 million. And with that, I will take any questions.
Any questions for the presenter? Councilmember Dorfman?
Madam Chair, I'll move this as well, but I have one question. Is there a disruption to BNSF trains during the construction at any point?
Madam Chair, committee members, there may be some short outages, about 8 hours, that will be coordinated directly with BNSF.
Thanks.
Second the motion, Madam Chair.
Okay. Any other discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion carries. Thank you. All right, next is the Southwest LRT item relating to a supplemental funding agreement with Hennepin County. We have Brian Renzel.
And
Or
he is
yourself.
not here. I'm going to go ahead and do this
Awesome.
one for him. Business item 2019-44 is for a subordinate funding agreement number 12 with Hennepin County for construction support services. The council and county entered into a master funding agreement in January of 2019. Master funding agreements serve as a framework for transfer of funds between the council and county for engineering, technical, professional services through subordinate funding agreements, or SFAs. SFAs then are the work order agreements that define the specific scope, duration, and the cost of the work. SFA number 12 with Hennepin County would address staff support for the duration of 2019. Areas of focus this coming year would include engineering support, utility relocation, bridge inspection, and construction inspection services. The recommendation for business item 2019-44 is to authorize the regional administrator to negotiate and execute subordinate funding agreement number 12 to the master funding agreement with Hennepin County for construction support services in a total amount not to exceed $650,000, which is in the project budget. And with that, I'll take any questions.
Any questions from council members? Okay, not, I'll entertain a motion to approve.
Move approval.
Second.
Any other discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. And item carries. Thank you. All right, next we're on to item 2019-46, which is also a same week item for 80 60-foot BRT articulated expansion buses. We have Mike Joyce.
Good afternoon, Madam Chair, committee members. My name is Matthew Dake, Director of Bus Maintenance. Mike Joyce is traveling this week, so I'm filling in for him. So I'll be presenting 2019-46, which is the same week item, which seeks the Metropolitan Council to authorize regional administrator to exercise existing contract options with New Flyer of America to purchase 8 60-foot articulated diesel buses for the D line in an amount not to exceed $7,008,507.41. The existing contract with New Flyer is a 5-year contract, which included a 60 bus base order and 88 option buses. The option buses requested are 8 diesel 60-foot articulated buses for use on the D-line corridor. The current contract with New Flyer expires this month on March 30th, and a new contract solicitation for 60-foot buses has not been established yet. So to ensure Metro Transit acquires the 8 buses with price certainty on this contract, we recommend leveraging the existing contract before it expires. If we cannot proceed with this procurement, a new contract will need to be established, and typically from the point of creating the RFP to delivering of buses is about an 18-month process, and it's very highly likely the price will increase per unit on a new contract. The new bus procurement advances thrive through the lens of promoting regional prosperity for everyone by continuing to serve residents who depend on transit. And funds are available locally, as Ed had explained earlier. We're going to use local funds and reimburse that with the federal funds. To a total cost of these new buses is estimated at, once again, $7,008,507.41. And there is no known opposition to this action. And I'd be happy to take any questions.
Questions from Councilmember Mudd?
Madam Chair, I'd like to move this agenda item. I also think it's really exciting that we are purchasing Minnesota-made in St. Cloud New Flyer buses that are made by union members who get a living wage, health care, and a pension. And I'm excited that the governor's budget would allow us to build out one BRT line every year for the next 10 years and to purchase a total of 220 of these electric buses. The move away from dirty diesel to clean energy is really extraordinary.
There's been a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
Is there any other discussion? Not all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. And the
Thank
motion passes. Thank you. Next, we are on to item 2019-37, same week item, which is the public comment report and amendment to the 2040 TPP plan for Riverview. We have Cole Henniker here.
Yes. Good afternoon. I'm Cole Henniker, Multimodal Planning Manager. So today I'm here to talk about the TPP amendment to add Riverview to the Transportation Policy Plan. We released this for public comment on November 29th of 2018, and the public comment period was open until January 21st. We had a public hearing on January 9th. I think a number of you were there. We promoted the public comment period through social media, website, email distribution list, and we did advertise it in the Star Tribune. We ended up getting comments from over 80 individuals, accounting to 90 unique comments. The public comment summary was attached to the business item. So this is standard procedure for us to produce a summary of the public comment that we receive. In addition to the formal public comment process, we did have some meetings with tribal staff, including MnDOT Tribal Outreach and a number of tribes. And we also had a tribal consultation with the Prairie Island Indian community. And that was a request that was sent out. Nick, did that come from the chair?
Yes.
The letter? So just to engage them, this is a very important tribal area that this corridor passes through, and so we want to make sure that they're engaged and aware of the process. What emerged from the public comment period were a couple of themes. There was a lot of support for transit in this corridor, but a number of comments were preferring arterial bus rapid transit, which was another alternative studied in the alternatives analysis phase. There was a lot of concern about the impacts and costs of adding modern streetcar to this corridor. Generally, our response to that is a number of the concerns that were raised are still able to be addressed in future phases through design or the environmental review. And so just noting that, you'll see why we have a particular part of the motion. There were comments that preferred the Ford alignment that would go off of the West 7th corridor and pass through the Ford site connecting the Blue Line in Minneapolis. Again, a lot of comments about cultural significance of this area, including Fort Snelling, but also other cultural aspects like the native areas and things that were important to users of the area. A lot of wildlife passes through this corridor as well, so those concerns were raised. And then some comments just supported some nearer term transit investments and hopeful that we can address some of the capacity issues and user experience on the Route 54. There were also supportive comments that we didn't necessarily highlight here. Given all of that, we have proposed that we accept the public comment report as it's drafted in front of you. Direct the regional administrator to enter a memorandum of understanding with Ramsey and Hennepin County regarding the roles and responsibilities for the next phase, which will be led by Ramsey County. The council is not expected to take this project over until we enter project development a few years from now. And so there'll be a significant amount of design and engineering work as part of the environmental analysis for what we think is at least the next 2 years. And so we want to make sure that we understand their role and our role in making sure that we can address some of the concerns that were raised during the public comment period. So that's just a near-term next step would be to enter a memorandum of understanding with those counties. And as a result of being able to do that, we think it's prudent to adopt this amendment into the transportation policy plan and move forward. So be happy to answer any questions you have.
Any questions from the committee? Councilmember Mudd?
Madam Chair, I suspect this question is for Nick. I think there will be people someday who ask us, why doesn't Riverview go to the Ford site? Just as they're asking us right now, why doesn't North Star go all the way to St. Cloud? I'm wondering how we would respond to that and if the process moving forward would allow for that decision to be reexamined.
Madam Chair, Council Member. So in the development of the locally preferred alternative, the Ford site route was studied as one of the multiple alternatives. And the locally preferred alternative came out of this for a few key reasons. Number one, it had a higher ridership than the Ford route. And part of that is for a couple of reasons. Number one, the route is a more direct route between downtown and the airport and Mall of America along the West 7th. So it was a significantly longer travel time to go through the Ford site and connect to the Blue Line at that point. It also served a different market area, so the ridership market, maybe from the area around the Highland and the redevelopment of Ford, is a market that is different than what the transit market is between downtown and going to the airport. But that also led to the fact that the locally preferred alternative also said that the local study of what transit investments are needed in the Ford area is part of the recommendation, and that's part of what will happen after this action here is that the city, the county, and the council will begin to study what transit investments should be done in that area too, even though the local preferred alternative is on West 7th. And there is also, there's just different markets, and those are some of the key drivers, but from that, the local preferred alternative from ridership development and market were the key ones that differentiated the alignment along West 7th versus alignment that went partly on West 7th through Ford site. So still a need for transit in that area, just the low best alternative for this process became what's before you tonight.
Nick, if I can just add to Chair, the one thing I failed to mention is we as every corridor moves through the approval process, we do get resolutions of support from the local governments. And so St. Paul did support this LPA You may be familiar that that hasn't always continued throughout the life of a project. We have Gold Line as an example of a city rejecting the LPA midstream. We don't predict that that would happen, but there are multiple steps of approvals that the local governments will go through before the project becomes final. We're just at kind of step one.
Any other questions? If not, I'll entertain a motion to approve business item.
I'll move the item, Madam Chair.
Is there a second?
I'll second it.
Any other discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. And motion carries. Thank you, Cole. Next, we are on to item 2019-47, another same week item. It is the purchase agreement with Apollo Video Technology, and we have Paul Colton.
Good afternoon, Madam Chair, Committee. I'm Paul Colton, Fleet Manager for MTS. And this afternoon, I have for you the following proposed action that the Met Council authorized the Regional Administrator to enter into a sole source agreement with Apollo Video Technology in an amount not to exceed $890,500 to purchase up to 122 DVR camera systems and spare units. We have a large Metro Mobility order of buses and sedans that will be coming in May and June. And so this order will replace the old camera systems that are on those buses that are no longer supported by Verint Video Technology, which is our former technology for video camera use. So this system really has helped transit do a number of different investigations, whether it be accidents, whether it be incidents on the bus, conflict between driver and customer, helps us do some different levels of contract management oversight as well. So a very valuable system that assists us in doing day-to-day work and investigations. This purchase of Apollo camera systems supports the Thrive Equity outcome by providing ongoing safe transportation to all Metro Mobility riders and drivers, regardless of their race, ethnicity, economic means, or ability, and will assist to mitigate and resolve adverse incidents that may occur during transit service. This project will be funded by RTC funds, and we're meeting with Apollo Video on Wednesday to discuss the final details. So at this point, I'd be glad to take any questions you have.
Are there any questions for the presenter? If not, I'd entertain a
Move approval.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any other discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. And the motion carries. Thank you.
Thank you.
On to our last business item. It is item 2019-48, also a same week item. It's release for public comment draft amendment number 2 to the 2040 Transportation Policy Plan. We have Steve Peterson.
Hey, thank you, Madam Chair. We just concluded TPP amendment number 1, so we wanted to start up with number 2 here as soon as possible. Not really, but so the item before you is to release it for public comment, and so we're a little earlier in the process. And Director Thompson did give a presentation to this committee back in January 23rd to go through all the details. But just to remind you, there's 2 separate projects that are part of this TPP amendment number 2. First of which is the Gold Line project. And the reason that needs to be amended into the TPP is because they're extending the line and adding the station at the end of the line in Woodbury. The second project is one of many projects on I-94 in the next several years. This one is a project between Maple Grove and the city of Rogers. And this is to add a lane expansion from the recently funded Dayton Parkway interchange westbound to Highway 101 in Rogers. And so this has gone through TAC Planning tab and now to this committee to release it for public comment. So the details of that would be to release it these 2 projects for public review and comment. The public comment period would be from February 28th to April 12th with the public hearing on April 2nd at 4 p.m. here in council chambers. With that, I'll turn it back to you, Madam Chair, and entertain any questions.
Any questions for presenter?
Move for approval, Madam Chair.
All right, is there a second?
Second.
Any other discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Thank you. That concludes our business for tonight. Councilmember Dorfman.
Madam Chair, since this is our last meeting, I just want to acknowledge all the great support we've gotten from MTS and Metro Transit staff, particularly Nick and Brian, for most of our time here. And I also want to acknowledge the Southwest Project Office and Jim Alexander's great leadership. Moving on, there's a lot that's happened over the last 4 years, moving really important transit projects through this region, and it wouldn't have happened without these great staff. So it's nice all the support they've offered us.
Thank you. Quickly, before one little business cleanup item, for consent agenda, I would propose moving 2 and 4 to consent. The rest are all same week items. So we don't, so it'll be a lot of talking on Wednesday. I apologize in advance. I'd like to echo Councilmember Dorfman's. First of all, it's an absolute pleasure to serve with all of you because we've done a lot of work on the Transportation Committee, and it couldn't happen without our great staff that really keeps us informed. Special thank you to Councilmember Schreiber. You were a great leader for a long time, and completely indebted to you. So thank you very much. With that, we can be adjourned.
Okay. Thank you.